Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, the Impersonal Life in the Book of John. We're in chapter 2 of both books as we read all the way through both of these books to try to see what Elvis Presley saw in the text as he read them himself. Hello, Gunn. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. And we'll get started with a song. And this is about the cross that Elvis saw on the Circle G that told him he was on the right path, and that I think connects directly in to these two texts. Hi, Colleen. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate seeing you here.
He saw the cross at dawn and said, "It's a good omen, and a dream again." At the break of dawn, through the window pane, he saw a cross in morning rain, white as grace, tall as prayer, calling him to build and share. Not a kingdom, not a throne, but a place of love alone, where laughter rides on horse's breath and peace outshines the fear of death. Come home to the circle and the sign, where the lake reflects the holy line. No one needs money, no one needs fame, just a handshake and a name. Come home where the cross stands tall. Come and share the love of all. Mobile homes and barbecue nights, trucks and trials and porch light rides, the hand-picked heart to share the dream, a mythic village by the stream. This is more than land, it's grace, refuge carved in sacred space, a gift of love to friends and kin, protected from the world's loud din. Come home to the circle and the sign, where the lake reflects the holy line. No one needs money, no one needs fame, just a handshake and a name. Come home, come home, where the cross stands tall. Come and share the love of all. Oh, come and share the love of all.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we're going to be hearing the echoes from the Book of John and the Impersonal Life. But we're going to start by looking at a slightly different edition of the Bible. The Bible that we've been reading is the King James Version. And I did receive a question about why would we continue to use a Bible that had a translation from the 1600s, and not everything was in it, sounds exactly like what we would think people would say back then, specifically Jesus. So I'm actually going to pull up the text that we were looking at yesterday from John. And right at the beginning of the second chapter, Jesus is with Mary, his mother, and they're at some kind of event. And there's a bunch of people, and they've run out of wine. And wine is like the standard drink of these events. There is no party without wine. It's not because they're getting drunk, but because they all typically drink wine with like every meal. I believe it was part of a sanitary thing to make sure that the water was safe to drink. And mostly the wine would be very watered down, but they don't have any. So Mary comes to Jesus and she says, they don't have any wine. Can you do anything? Hi, Terry. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. So Jesus said to Mary, according to the text of the King James Version, he says, "Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come." So that sounds like it's very rude. Like Jesus had said something extremely rude to his mother. I mean, that didn't sit right with some of us because we're not biblical scholars. I don't think there's any biblical scholars that are in the chat today or that came forward in the comments from previous videos. So I think that we would all just be normal people struggling to read this. So I went and did some more research on it. And it turns out that Jesus is not being rude in this section. It sounds very rude to us because of the language that is written and that we hear. But this is translated from another language. And in the original Hebrew, the word that Jesus uses for woman is an honorific, something like madam. But in the Hebrew, and again, I'm not an expert on the Hebrew language or any language, even English, but my understanding is that this word in Hebrew covers a lot of aspects of a female in society, in their society. So this was an honorific like madam. But when it was translated into English, it's also a word they use to mean female or woman. So they've translated it as woman. Because it would have been the same word in Hebrew, but it wrapped together the meaning that we distinguish with other words like madam or Mrs. or ma'am. And then the sentence that says, "What have I to do with thee?" This is a colloquialism or a phrase that has a meaning other than what it looks like. So when you translate it directly, it does say, "What have I to do with thee?" But they used this phrase in Hebrew to indicate this is none of our business. This is none of my business. This is none of your business. This is the business of another. We should not put our noses into it. In other words, this isn't our party. We didn't supply the wine. We weren't supposed to supply the wine. So we probably should not get involved in this. Now, the last section of what he says, "Mine hour is not yet come." This is an indication, and it's not clear, I don't think, in the text. And you really have to, I think, compare it to other Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, to understand that at this point in time, Jesus has not performed any miracles. Zero. Nobody knows for sure that he's the Son of God. Some people believe, like Mary, she certainly believes he is the Son of God. She knows from her own experience that he's the Son of God, but nobody else does. They just have to take him on his word. So his disciples are with him. They believe what he's saying as a teacher, as a rabbi. But he hasn't publicly performed any miracles. And again, I'm not a biblical scholar, so I could be wrong about the timing, but my understanding is most people at this point didn't know Jesus could do miracles. And so he's being asked by Mary to perform a miracle. And he's saying, it's not yet time. Hasn't come yet. This isn't the moment to reveal myself. Or at least he doesn't know that this is the moment to reveal himself at this moment. And so Mary tells him, do what you need to do. It's just checking to see if there's anything you could do. And then Jesus decides that yes, he can, and he performs the miracle of turning the water into wine. So the words that are used here, because they came out of the 17th century, the 1600s, and they're almost literal translations of the words that are used in Hebrew, but they don't necessarily bring forth the semantic meaning that was behind those words in Hebrew. It comes out as, woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. And we're not the only ones who felt like that sounded rude, because apparently this is something that's discussed within biblical circles. So I thought that would be interesting for us to understand that the words are coming out of the 1600s, but they do not indicate that Jesus was rude. Now, I had even speculated that because Jesus was here to experience life as a mortal being, that he would have experienced frustration, being angered, a lot of things that we all feel, but you especially feel as a teenager towards your parents. And I'd said maybe he'd even been snappy with his parents. And so it comes down to the fact that Jesus never sinned. So the snappiness that he may have had with Mary or Joseph would have been not to a point that it would have been a sin. So I'm not sure where that line would exactly be drawn as I look back on my own teenage years and things that I may have said to my parents, or definitely wanted to say, whether I said them or not. But the idea here is that Jesus did struggle with all of these human frailties. He did not succumb to any of them, but he intimately understood them, but that he was not a rude person to his mother. And Gunn says, didn't he call God my father at that time? So yes, he did tell people that God was his father, but he had not performed a miracle for them to see. So they had to take him on blind faith at his word. Other than Mary, who actually experienced a miracle, so she definitely knows. Joseph was right next to the miracle, so he probably understands very deeply as well. But the disciples who he is gathering, they're taking their word from, like, John, who is saying, I recognize in this man because there was a sign that a dove landed on him, and that's the sign, but Jesus himself has not given the sign. This is the beginning of it right here. So that's something interesting that I learned about the scripture here. But I want to show us, I wanted to talk about why would we continue to use this version of the Bible if it has things in it like this that might lead people in today's society astray. And I think that there's two major reasons. One is tradition, that this is seen as a very good literal translation of the Hebrew text, that there is value in the translation. And like we're looking at this passage, they've directly translated the words. They just didn't get the meaning, perhaps, as it should have been behind it. But they have given us the real words, which allows us to think about these things in our language, which is difficult here on this program because I know that there are people listening that they actually think in a different language, right? So it's so interesting to think about how this scripture has traveled around the world and that people understand it in different ways because of the language itself. But that's one reason. It's really the tradition and the quality of the translation as a direct translation. Now, the second reason is really a commercial reason. It's really about money. Okay, this book is in the public domain, and it's been in the public domain since copyright laws began. So anyone could publish a King James Bible, and they can begin to sell it, and they can earn money on it. And there are many publishers of books that all they publish is versions of the Bible. It remains the best-selling book of all time. And so every year it sells a massive amount of copies. Not as many copies, perhaps, as the newest bestseller, but it's very plannable. It pretty much happens the same every year. There's a massive number of these books sold, and you can basically guarantee yourself that you're going to sell this number. And therefore, they don't have to put any money into publishing the book. They can just reap the profits. They have to put in the work to typeset and print and the cost and all that, but they don't have to pay anybody to write anything or to pay for the material itself. And that is a big expense in the publishing industry. So that's one of the reasons this King James will never go out of print. They're going to continue to print it for as long as printing is available or publishing of any kind. But let's take a look at this Bible, which you can see is leather bound in black, and on the front, it's got a name embossed in gold, and it says Elvis Aaron Presley. Now, this particular edition it is published, I think we can actually see it. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's published by Thomas Nelson and Sons out of New York, but it also says Toronto and Edinburgh, but in the U.S. they're based out of New York. And it says 1953. Now, does that mean that this Bible was printed in 1953? No, it doesn't. These dates in these Bibles don't work the same as like they do in most books. Like you can say, hey, this book was printed in this year. This book was first published in 1953, and it may have been published for years and years afterward in the exact same edition. I don't know. They don't really mark that. Or they don't have to. Let's put it that way. And you can see that this is a revised standard version. So this is not the King James. And it is saying on here that this was translated from the original tongues, being the version set forth in 1611, which I believe that's the date of the King James Bible. But this one was revised in 1881 through 1885, and again in 1901. And then again, it was revised and compared with the most ancient authorities in 1952. So the year before the version was published. So it's incorporating multiple revisions, and it's publishing them all as one, with the most recent revisions being the year before, and they're calling this the Revised Standard Version. Okay, what does that really mean? It means that if you're Elvis, and you're going to church in 1953, you're 18 years old. This is the year that you graduate high school. Now, you go to church often by yourself. Your parents go, but a lot of times you drive yourself, and you go in by yourself and you leave by yourself, because you're a young man that's coming into the world. And Gladys and Vernon didn't go every week to church. Elvis sometimes just went by himself, and there are people who verify that. Plus, he had this car that he was really proud of, that he'd been working on. And so he would drive this in his store-bought clothes that he bought for himself. Probably not from Lansky's. He probably was wearing something slightly more conservative in church. But he did purchase these clothes himself. They would have been things that he chose to wear. And we know his sense of style. And he would have been carrying a Bible, because when you went to church, you carry a Bible. Now, what Bible did he carry? Was he carrying the family Bible that we've seen earlier, that Gladys and Vernon also carried to the Assembly of God? I mean, I don't think he was taking the family Bible. So at first, I don't think he had any Bible to take. But eventually, I think to complete his outfit, to complete the image that he's presenting of a young man, self-sufficient. And one of the reasons Elvis is going to church is to attract females. He's very interested in marrying a woman who is very like Gladys and starting his own family. This is something he's thinking about from the very moment that he graduates in June of 1953. So the date on this Bible is integral to the history of Elvis Presley. But we don't know when he got this Bible. But it would have been a young man's Bible in 1953. Older people would not have gravitated to a new translation of the Bible. This was something for young people to do. So as a young person, he would have, I think, if he had bought the Bible himself, and we can't prove that he did, we can't prove he bought clothes himself, we could prove he bought other things himself. This was his period when he was first beginning to truly make money that was his. He'd been doing this for about a year now, but he really started to invest himself into a career once he graduated high school. And he didn't get into the Crown Electric until early in 1954, I don't think. So it wasn't that job, but he was working other jobs, and he was putting money in his pocket, and he was paying bills at home. He was supporting his family. And so if he had gone out to buy a Bible, I'm absolutely certain he would have gotten his name put on the front. Which is very interesting, because this one has a double A in the Aaron, and there is a big controversy about when the double A began. And if you followed the Signed, Sealed, and Remembered series that I've done, at the very beginning, we looked at birth certificates and stuff, and we can identify where the issues with the A or the double A began. But whoever got him this Bible put the double A on it. So if he got it himself, he put the double A on it. And if he had gone in to purchase a Bible, well, my feeling is he would have purchased, as a young man wearing hip clothes, doing his own thing, he would have got a newer version, right? Like, this was the hip thing to do. That's all wild speculation. What we know for sure is the Bible was originally printed in 1953. At some point, it ended up in Elvis's possession. At the time that Elvis passed away, this Bible was in his bedroom. Patsy Presley, Elvis's double first cousin, she wrote a letter which came with this volume when it was sold at auction. It's part of the provenance of the volume. She actually sold it directly to somebody else, but eventually it ended up on the auction circuit. And Patsy's letter says, "Shortly after Elvis passing, my Uncle Vernon and I went up into Elvis's bedroom at Graceland to organize and pack many of his personal belongings. This Holy Bible was one of 3 that Elvis had on his night table. After packing them, Uncle Vernon had me take them home for safekeeping and eventually gave them to me. Patsy's telling us this isn't the only Bible that was in there. There were 3. But this one was there. And it's from 1953 or thereabouts. I don't think it's from the 1960s. I don't think anybody bought this Bible in the 1960s and gave it to Elvis. I think, however he got it, it was before he went to the army. Can't prove that. Wild speculation, once again, based solely on the date 1953. But it's there in his bedroom in 1977. Here you can see the spine. You can see that it says Revised Standard Edition. And here we can see where Elvis has underlined passages of the Bible. So this is Genesis, 1st chapter, 31st verse. And it says, "And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day." So this is a line that somehow resonated with Elvis. God had looked at everything he'd made, and it was very good. I'm not sure what would resonate with Elvis about that, other than that Elvis himself was a creative soul. He was making things. Now, in his case, those things were his interpretations of songs, the recordings that he brought out of that, or the movies. And when God looked at what he himself had made, he said it was good. And so when Elvis looked at what he himself had made, I wonder if he thought it was good. We know that he was disappointed with some of the movies. And so I wonder if he's wrestling here with the disappointment of creativity when the product doesn't match up to what you'd hoped that it would be. But he may have seen something completely different here. He's underlined some more passages here. This is Job 31, verses 24 through 26. "If I have made gold my hope, and have said to the fine gold, thou art my confidence. If I rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because my hand had gotten much, if I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness." A part that he has not underlined is verse 28, "This also were an iniquity to be punished by the judge. For I should have denied that the God that is above." So this passage is, I think, saying that if you worship money before God, you've made a major error. In fact, you're denying that God exists because you are worshiping this money. And if you believe that great wealth is something to be happy about, well, you're mistaken. That it's not the wealth, it's what the wealth represents, which is success. And that success was brought to you by God. And we've seen that also reflected in the impersonal life that we've read so far, just in the 1st chapter. that everything that you have is because of this divine presence that has brought it to you, both the good and the bad. But in this case, it's specifically reflecting on what many people would think of as the good or the wealth. And Gunn is asking, was John, who in Sweden is called Johannes, hopefully I said that right, pronounced it correctly, but was John his favorite? I don't know, Gunn. I think if I had to just say which book of the Bible was Elvis's favorite, it would be the Psalms. They were songs, and they spoke to him in a special manner because they were songs. However, because they are songs and they're poetry, it's very difficult for me to look at them and to pull the things from them that Elvis probably saw. I'm not a big understander of poetry and song, even though I've created songs for this channel. Isn't that odd? But I understand prose very well. Like, I'm really good at reading. I'm not as good at writing prose, but I can write it. I'd like to think I'm okay at it. But the poetry, it throws me. And in this verse, which is Isaiah 29, verses 19 through 20, it says, "The meek also shall increase their joy in the Lord, and the poor among men shall rejoice in the Holy One of Israel. For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner ceaseth, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off." This is an interesting passage to me because it's talking about the meek and the poor, and that's where Elvis came from. His life before fame was one of being meek and poor. His family had been meek and poor. His family's family had been meek and poor. All of his family's friends had been meek and poor. Almost everyone that Elvis brought into the inner circle had at one point been meek and poor. And with Elvis, they have all inherited the earth, and hopefully they're increasing their joy in the Lord. So I think that this spoke to Elvis because he had been poor. And now let's take a look at, we saw this yesterday, but let's look at it one more time. This is the first verses, or the first sentences of the second chapter of The Impersonal Life, and Elvis has underlined them. Let me try to pull up our spiritual book. All right, hold on just a second for me. See if I can get us right down to the right page. Yeah, so this is actually what he's underlined. I don't have it marked here as underlined yet, but now, in order that you may learn to know me, so that you can be sure it is I, your own true self, who speak these words, you must first learn to be still, to quiet your human mind and body, and all of their activities, so that you no longer are conscious of them. You may not be able to do this, but I will teach you how, if you really want to know me, and are willing to prove it by trusting me and obeying me in all that I now shall call upon you to do. Listen. So the inner voice, the I am, that resides in your heart, who Elvis would have seen as God, and who the Jonathan the author of this text, he saw this text as a conversation directly with God and the reader. And he felt that God was talking directly to him when he wrote it. So this is about Christianity. The God he speaks of is the Christian God. And he is identifying that God as living in your heart and being an integral part of you as the believer. And that even if you don't believe, this is still true, but you're not able to reap the benefits. You're not able to see the knowledge. You're not able to hear the voice. Which in the text says, listen. Try to imagine the I who speak throughout these pages as being your higher or divine self, addressing and counseling your human mind and intellect, which you will consider for the moment as being a separate personality. Your human mind is so constituted that it cannot accept anything which does not conform with what it has previously experienced or learned, and which its intellect does not consider reasonable. That's a very interesting thought, that people are not able to accept ideas which their minds have not been prepped for. That you can't just experience some events and understand them in any way because you don't have an experience to compare them to. That understanding is a building of multiple experiences layered on top of one another. And that without the experiences, the real life knowledge that you gain through doing, then you will never truly understand some of this knowledge that's being handed out. You don't have the right lens for it. You can't see all the colors. And that if these things that you're learning, they don't conform in any way with what you already know, there's a good chance you'll just jettison that idea. You won't be able to even consider it. It's too far gone, too far out there. And that the author understands this. But he's also telling you that the voice that we're talking about that you're hearing, consider it not to be yourself at this time. It is you, and it's God, but just consider it to be something totally separate, a distinct voice, and that way you'll be able to understand it better. Because it's coming from outside yourself. And it's not you, but you know you can trust it because it is you. I think that's all being said here. And I think that would have resonated with Elvis because everything that Elvis did was really driven out of self-belief. Everybody told him all the way along it wasn't going to work. You know, starting with Vernon. I never knew a guitarist who made any real money. Is basically what Vernon told Elvis. Vernon didn't know any successful guitarist. Well, that was true. But there were successful guitarists in the world. Vernon just didn't know them. You know, but they were out there. So Elvis had to have a strong belief in himself. And that would have been coming directly from inside, a voice that was telling him, got to ignore these people. You have to push forward. You know, even when he went and he saw Sam Phillips, and Sam was like, I had this song, a ballad, and Marion thought you would be the best to sing it, but it's just not happening. Couldn't get that first song out of Elvis the way he wanted it. And that's when he hooked him up with Scotty Moore, and then they came back the next day, you know, a day after that, and they recorded That's All Right. But Elvis must have left that session thinking Sam had basically told him he wasn't going to make it. And yet he powered on. And when he got the call to go see Scotty, he ran over there to see Scotty Moore. He was ready to seize that opportunity again. But I think it would have been very easy for him just to quit at that moment. He'd also been in earlier and had recordings done. Sam hadn't been around. I think he was trying to meet Sam. But Sam hadn't been there for at least one of them. He had for another, but somehow Elvis didn't impress Sam during either of those sessions. I know Sam heard part of the first session because that's the one that Marion recorded, Sam's secretary. And I know that he heard the second one because he was there to record the session, but he didn't say, "Hey, you're the greatest singer I've ever heard. Come on back." It was a ho-hum kind of deal. And I think it would have been real easy, because this was nearly a year before Elvis recorded That's All Right, that Elvis could have just gave the whole thing up. Elvis went and tried to get a position within a quartet, a gospel quartet. He really wanted to sing gospel quartet. And he couldn't get it. Like, they didn't let him in. So I think, again, he must have really been down about that. And he could have given it all up, but something inside him was telling him not to. So he, in his own personal experience, knows that what Jonathan is saying about hearing something inside and only being able to know that it's true because you've already been through this, well, I think that would have resonated with him. Hi, Angel. Good to see you. Appreciate having you here. It has been a long time, so I hope you've been watching the reruns. So let's take a look through some more of this text. It goes on, therefore, in addressing it, you are using such terms and expressions as will most clearly explain to your intellect the truths it must understand before the mind can awaken to the consciousness of your meaning. The fact is, this I is yourself, your real self. So Jonathan's now telling us that this voice that he's told you to consider to be a separate person, an individual voice telling you things for your own benefit, this is your real self. That the you that you think of as you, it's the materialistic, secular part of yourself. But the real self is buried, and you don't listen to it very often. And it's trying to give you knowledge. But your human mind, I think, is the term that Jonathan is using to mean the secular portion of your personality. Your human mind has heretofore been so engrossed with the task of supplying its intellect and body with all manner of selfish indulgences that it's never had time to get acquainted with the real you, its true Lord and Master. Elvis is a man who has had money now to supply the needs or the desires, not the needs, but the desires of his intellect and body. So he can eat as much as he wants. He can consume whatever he likes. He can purchase the clothing that makes his body feel good. He can surround himself with physical comforts. And he can occupy his intellect with things like television, books, the radio, movies, to an endless supply, as much as he wants. But Jonathan is saying that's getting in the way because you don't have any time to listen to the real you. I think this would have resonated with Elvis because he believed in meditation that was linked to his karate, which is a point in time where you push away all the material pieces of your life and you concentrate on your inner self, which could be seen as the real you. While you have been so interested and affected by the pleasures and sufferings of your body and intellect that you have almost come to believe you are your intellect and body, and that you have consequently nearly forgotten me, your divine self. So the divine self is telling Jesus, or telling Elvis, you're doing so much consuming of things that entertain and please you that you don't have room enough for me. And that you've forgotten that what we're supposed to be doing is focusing on me, your divine self, and the growth of your divine self. And you're lost in this world of all these things that some people might say make you happy, but it's not true happiness. It's a distraction from the true work that you should be doing, which is getting to know who you are at the divine level. And I would assume that so that you could be a better person and you could accomplish what you're truly supposed to be accomplishing. And the text goes on, I am not your intellect and body. And this message is to teach you that you and I are one. The words I hear and speak, and the main burden of these instructions is to awaken your consciousness to this great fact. So your divine self is not this secular overlay through which you normally envision the world. The part of yourself where you normally live, what you might think of as the living room of your mind. You know, where your internal television and movies and books and that list, your internal refrigerator that has that list of all the great things you love to eat and that you're going to seek out to consume during the day. That is not you. That's a place that you reside, a place where you function because we have to function in the world. But that's not the true you. The true you is not in that living room, and you've got to get to the true you in order to truly accomplish the purpose of your life. And that most people don't understand this, and that's why he's awakening people to this consciousness. And the text goes on, but you cannot awaken to this fact until you can get away from the consciousness of this body and intellect, which so long have held you enslaved. You must feel me within before you can know I am there. So, people have spent so long away from their true selves, they don't even know their true selves are in there anymore. They've become completely convinced that this living room of the mind in which they reside is the completeness of themselves, the entirety of themselves. But it's not even the best part of themselves. It's not even a part. It's a temporary part, one which will pass when you pass from this world, but the I am will still be there. And most people aren't working on it because they've forgotten it's there. The text says, now in order that you can become wholly oblivious of your mind and its thoughts and your body and its sensation, so that you can feel me within, it is necessary that you studiously obey these my instructions. So the text will now tell us and tell Elvis how to quiet the mind, how to leave that living room of the mind in which you reside, to leave it behind so that you can then meet your true self. And I think this whole section is going to resonate with Elvis because it's basically what he's doing in meditation for karate. So he's learned already to do this in a different discipline. And in 1964, when he receives the first copy of this book from Larry Geller, you know, he's already learned these lessons in 1960 from Hank Slamansky and Ed Parker, and in 1959 from Jürgen Seidel. He's already learned how to quiet his mind and how to reach this inner self, but he didn't realize it was the I am. And so I think the book is opening something to him that he's already been experiencing. Just as the book said, you have to have already had these experiences to truly understand what is being said. So the book says, sit in a quiet, or let me start over. The book says, sit quiet in a relaxed position, and when wholly at ease, let your mind take in the significance of these words. Be still and know I am God. This is a very significant statement. Be still and know I am God. This statement is significant because Elvis notates this statement into other books. When he gifts other volumes to people, not the Impersonal Life, but other books that he likes, he inscribes these words into it somewhere. Not all of them, but I have seen these words inscribed in other books. And I've seen it more than once. So this is a passage that truly means something to Elvis. Be still and know I am God. I thought Elvis made this up until I read this portion of the book. Just like yesterday. I truly thought Elvis had made up this line because it has a certain rhythm and cadence to it, and it's not exactly correct English structure. And so it's like a verse. And so I thought it was his way of condensing knowledge into a small verse, but he's actually found it here from Joseph Benner. And the text goes on, without thinking, allow this, my divine command, to penetrate deep into your soul. Let whatever impressions that come to your mind enter at will, without effort or interference on your part. Note carefully their import, for it is I, within, through these impressions, instructing you. Then, when somewhat of their vital significance begins to dawn upon your consciousness, speak these, my words, slowly, imperatively, to every cell of your body, to every faculty of your mind, with all the conscious power you possess. Be still and know I am God. The text is telling us, and Elvis, through his repetition of the verse we saw before, and this one, he also repeats this one into other books. Be still and know I am God. Well, it's the same verse. Be still and know I am God. Be still and know I am God. This is telling us that if your mind is whirling and it's thinking about other things, you cannot concentrate on hearing God's voice. That you can't hear it. It's drowned out by all these other things that you're doing. Still your mind, and you still your mind by stilling your body first. The text says, speak them just as they are herein written, trying to realize that the God of you commands and demands of your mortal self implicit obedience. Study them, search out their hidden potency. Brood over them, carry them with you into your work, whatever it be. Make them the vital dominating factor in your work, in all creative thoughts. This passage brood over them, carry them with you into your work, whatever it be. Well, what is Elvis's work? Well, at the time that he reads this book for the first time, in 1964, his work is movies. And they're not meaningful movies. It's also the songs that go with those movies, and for the most part, they are not meaningful songs. There are good songs from the soundtracks. Some of our favorites are from the soundtracks. Some of them have great meaning. But I think Elvis was seeing most of them, as well as the movies, as having virtually no meaning. Especially not compared to the kind of meaning that Benner is talking about. So Elvis has been brooding over this inability to carry these thoughts into his work, because he can't get them into these movies. But he does get them into an album, How Great Thou Art. He makes that album, and then he goes forward and has an entire one-day radio network, nearly a national broadcast, first thing that of its kind, never been done before, in order to get the words of and the songs of How Great Thou Art out there. Making this message of God in Jesus that Elvis wants to push out, because that's what, as a Christian, he knows he should be doing. He's now made that vital and a dominating factor in his work, and he wins a Grammy for it. And then when he begins to live perform again, and he's able to determine this is the show, he's not being told, here's a script. He now determines the script. He opens with gospel singers. He sings gospel songs himself. He tells stories on stage of his faith. They're not usually very long stories. They're usually hidden in with something else, but they're stories of his faith. So he carries this into his work from the point that he reads this book. He didn't prior. It's not in his works from the 1950s. It's not in any of his early works when he returns from the army. But after 1964, that's when he's thinking about, and that's why when we see him on the Circle G in 67, it's now been 3 years of brooding through this and reading all these other books and knowing that he's got to get this work, get these messages into his work. He has to. Because his inside voice has been telling him this, and the book has illustrated this is what the voice is telling you. Are you listening? And Gunn is asking, who is God? Is it Elvis's inner voice? It's God who lives inside Elvis. As a Christian, Elvis has opened his heart to Jesus, and that's why he's a Christian. He's accepted Christ into his heart. Now Christ lives in his heart. God lives in Elvis, just as he lives in every Christian. And because he's there, and because you've accepted him, you can now hear the knowledge that he has for you. You can ask him advice. He's going to give you the right knowledge. It's going to sound like you because it's coming from inside you. And it's filtered through your own experiences. So I think it's similar to seeing God. You cannot look upon God in all his glory. That we would just be incinerated. We don't have the capability to see God as he is. We have to filter him through our senses. And the book is telling us that your senses, if they haven't had these experiences previously, they won't recognize. They'll just shove that aside. Act like it's a hallucination or something. So you've had to have accepted God and Jesus into your heart. And then he's talking to you. And Gunn says that the movies were very meaningful for people around the world. And she hopes Elvis knew that. I'm not positive that Elvis did know that. Elvis knew that his fans loved him and that they loved his work, but I'm not sure that he would have agreed that the movies were meaningful to anyone. I know that they were. You know that they were. The fans who felt the meaning, they know that they were. But I'm not positive that Elvis himself saw it that way. I am almost 100% positive, and again, this is something I cannot prove, it is 100% speculation, that when Elvis looked at the products of his life, the commercial products that were being sold, that he began to feel regret that he had wasted time previously to 1964 by not instilling those messages into the songs and into the work, because he could have brought so many more people to Jesus. At the same time, that wasn't the plan for him. So I hope he recognized that as well. The plan, which he didn't know and nobody did, was to get him this book in 64 so that when he came back to the stage, he'd be able to implement the messages. But he couldn't have done that in the 50s because he didn't have the personal experience that the book tells us that you had to have. So it's all a thing about timing. And Gunn is asking, they gave a lot of money proving it. I'm lost on that question, Gunn. So maybe ask that one again. I'll try to answer it again here. But we are out of time for today. And this is where we're going to return in the next episode. We'll keep battling our way through chapter 2. But I think that this chapter 2 is maybe the reason. Of course, I haven't read the rest of the book yet. But it seems to be one of the reasons to me that Elvis would latch on to this book almost immediately. And why he would see Larry Geller as being a person of wisdom. Because he's brought him this book. But for now, we're going to leave on a song. And this one will be He Gave Us Everything, which is the story of the Circle G through the eyes of Donna Presley, Elvis's cousin. And until I see you all again, thank you so much for being here. And y'all keep on taking care of business.
Snow on the ground, Circle G, love all around. He bought that ranch, opened the gate, said come on in, let's celebrate. Tractor pulling through the snow, laughter rising, spirits glow. Both behind, wives and men, family fun again and again. He wasn't just a star in lights, he was the warmth in winter nights. Kindness wrapped in velvet flame, a heart that never played the fame. He gave us joy, he gave us praise, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us way. Gave us everything. Riding horses, baked so still, bridge and cross on the quiet hill. Barbecue smoke, stories told, moments more precious than gold. He'd ask me who I'm dating now, what I dream, what I'll allow. He cared like kin, not just a name. He lived for love, not for acclaim. He wasn't just a voice on stage, he was the soul behind the page. A man who'd sing to heal your day and laugh at midnight, lose away. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a gave us everything. A shadow in the night, famous face, but a heart so bright. Couldn't walk the street like you and me, so we built a world where we were free. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, to create our song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight breeze. He gave us love, he gave us way. Gave us everything. Yes, he gave us everything.